The morning in Vermont was crisp and refreshing. Avery Grant opened the barn door and took a deep breath as the morning sun washed over her. The soft April light poured down on Maple Crest Organic Farm, which her family had preserved for 3 generations. "I've loaded all of today's vegetables," Avery said, placing her hands on her hips and checking the cargo with satisfaction. A healthy flush colored her cheeks, and her brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. "The journey to Boston is long, so we'd better get an early start," her father Howard said as he lifted a wooden crate. "Today's farmers' market will be crowded." "Don't worry, I'm all set," Avery replied confidently. She had taken over the farm operations from her parents 4 years ago. Thanks to her innovative organic farming methods and direct-to-consumer sales strategy, the name Maple Crest Farm had become known beyond the local area. Martha, her mother, emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 thermal containers. "Breakfast and lunch. Don't forget to eat properly when things get busy at the market." Avery smiled at her mother. Martha was as hardy as Vermont's harsh climate. Her expression conveyed warmth as well as deep wisdom gained from life experience. "I know, Mom," Avery kissed her mother's cheek. 2 hours later, Avery was setting up her booth at Boston's bustling farmers market. She hung the Maple Crest Organic Farm banner and arranged her glossy-colored vegetables and homemade jams. Regular customers soon gathered around. "Avery, I've been looking forward to your kale this week," an elderly woman said. "Thank you for your continued support, Mrs. Jones," Avery responded with a smile. She truly loved her work and the connections it created with people. As the afternoon wore on and the crowd thinned, she noticed him for the first time. A tall man in a navy suit had stopped in front of her booth. He seemed somewhat out of place amid the market hustle. "Are all of these homegrown?" the man asked, picking up one of her tomatoes. "Yes, everything is grown on our farm. We don't use any pesticides or chemical fertilizers," Avery answered proudly. "Wonderful," the man smiled. "My name is Nathan Coldwell." Their conversation flowed naturally. Nathan explained that he worked as an investor and was interested in sustainable agriculture. His questions showed more than mere curiosity, and Avery was touched by his genuine interest. From that day on, Nathan visited Avery's booth almost weekly. He asked questions about the seasonal vegetables and listened to Avery's farming philosophy. Eventually, their conversations continued after the market closed, and they developed a habit of sharing coffee at a nearby cafe. "Your passion is truly remarkable," Nathan said one day.
"Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious."
"You have the courage to stand up for what you believe in." Avery blushed. "I'm just doing what I think is right." As autumn deepened, their relationship blossomed into romance. Nathan occasionally took her to upscale restaurants in Boston, but Avery felt happiest when walking the farm with him, sharing the fragrance of the fields at dusk. However, Avery gradually began to notice something odd. Nathan spoke freely about himself, but whenever the topic turned to his family, he often changed the subject. "What are your parents like?" Avery asked one night as they gazed at the stars from the balcony of his luxury apartment. Nathan answered with slight tension. "They're complicated people. Especially my mother, she values tradition and appearances very much." Several more months passed, and when the snow began to accumulate, Nathan finally proposed to Avery. He decorated her farm's barn with white winter lights that she loved, got down on one knee, and offered her a ring. After her joyful acceptance, Nathan's expression grew serious. "Avery, I want to introduce you to my parents. My mother might be a bit difficult, but they're an important part of my life." Avery squeezed his hand. "It's okay. We're in this together." She believed there was no wall their love couldn't overcome. The Georgian-style mansion in Boston's upscale Beacon Hill neighborhood felt like another world to Avery. As Nathan's car pulled into the cobblestone driveway, she instinctively straightened her posture. "Relax," Nathan gently touched her hand. "They'll like you." But his voice had a quality of someone trying to convince himself. The door opened, and a white-haired butler appeared. "Welcome home." Avery managed a tense smile and followed Nathan inside. The luxurious marble floor, chandeliers hanging from high ceilings, and portraits adorning the walls were all so far removed from her daily life. In the reception room, Eleanor Coldwell sat on a sofa with perfect posture. Her immaculately styled silver hair and pearl necklace spoke of her refinement. Beside her sat her husband Joseph, with a mild expression. Joseph stood to greet them. "So you're Avery. Welcome." Eleanor rose slowly, examining Avery from head to toe. "Welcome, Avery. Nathan has told me about you, but I must say, you have such a natural beauty." Her words seemed to carry hidden intent. Avery bowed politely. "Thank you for having me." Tea was served, and initially, the conversation flowed pleasantly on the surface. Joseph showed interest in Avery's farm, but Eleanor's questions gradually grew sharper. "Farm management must be such demanding work," Eleanor said after sipping her tea. "Getting covered in mud every day and taking care of animals. I simply can't imagine it." "It can be challenging at times, but it's rewarding," Avery replied, maintaining her smile. "And which university did you attend?" Eleanor asked abruptly. "University of Vermont. I majored in agricultural science." "Oh," Eleanor raised her voice slightly. "A local college. Our family has attended Harvard for generations. Nathan's grandfather, father, and Nathan himself." Avery simply smiled in silence, but Eleanor's intention was clear. Whenever Nathan tried to change the subject, Eleanor would pose questions that highlighted Avery's background and credentials from another angle. "By the way, Avery," Eleanor suddenly changed topics. "Would you attend next week's charity gala? It's a fundraiser for the new Boston Museum of Art wing. As Nathan's fiancé, you should make your social debut, don't you think?" Nathan looked at Avery with concern. "Mother, Avery is busy with the harvest that week." "It's fine, Nathan," Avery squeezed his hand. "I'd be happy to attend." A flash of surprise crossed Eleanor's eyes. "Wonderful. What about a dress? Do you have something suitable?" "Mother," Nathan's voice contained a warning. "Don't worry. I was just asking," Eleanor offered a cold smile. "I could lend you some of my old dresses if you'd like." The following week's gala was a trial for Avery. She arrived wearing a simple but elegant dress she had chosen herself, but upon seeing her, Eleanor immediately said loud enough for her friends to hear, "You have your own style. How unique." Throughout the night, Eleanor introduced Avery to her social circle not to praise her but to emphasize her differences. "This is Nathan's fiancée. She runs a farm in Vermont. Such a grounded lifestyle." During each conversation, Avery felt like her wine glass handling and fork usage were being scrutinized. Eleanor's friends were outwardly polite, but their eyes mixed curiosity with pity. "Coming from rural Vermont, you must find places like this unfamiliar," one woman asked. Avery smiled. "It's certainly a different world, but I believe the basics of human relationships are the same everywhere. Honesty and compassion are what matter most, regardless of where you are." Some people returned her smile genuinely. However, Eleanor pressed her lips together in dissatisfaction. On the way home, Nathan was quiet. Once in the car, he exhaled deeply. "Avery, I'm truly sorry. My mother, she's just worried in her own way." I don't think she'll ever accept me, Avery said honestly. She'll change with time, Nathan took her hand. What matters is that I love you. The conflicts with Eleanor continued. She seemed to test Avery by repeatedly inviting her to upscale restaurants, opera performances, and art exhibitions. At these venues, she constantly made comments highlighting Avery's otherness. Nathan, she's a lovely girl. Really, Eleanor told her son one day. But isn't our world too difficult for her? She's happy on her farm. Isn't it unfair to expect her to adapt to our lifestyle and expectations? Nathan took his mother's hand. Mother, Avery is the woman I've chosen. I want you to respect her. Eleanor seemed to yield to her son's determination on the surface. However, her eyes held not resignation but the glint of a new strategy. I understand, Nathan. Your happiness matters most, she smiled gently. Then let's hold a grand engagement party. We'll invite friends and relatives from both families to celebrate formally. I'd love to invite Avery's parents as well. Nathan felt relieved by his mother's sudden cooperative attitude, but Avery inwardly felt anxious. She knew that Eleanor Coldwell was not the type to give up so easily. Still, seeing Nathan's happy face, she suppressed her concerns. The grand ballroom of Boston's Four Seasons Hotel glowed in the evening light. Champagne gold lighting reflected off crystal chandeliers, filling the entire room with warm illumination. Avery was making final preparations in a small dressing room, surprised at her own reflection in the mirror. She wore an emerald green dress that Nathan had chosen with a stylist. I matched it to your eye color, Nathan had said. Indeed, the dress accentuated the greenish hue of her eyes. Her hair was not in its usual ponytail but fell over her shoulders in soft curls. There was a knock at the door, and her mother Martha entered. She too was not wearing her usual farm clothes but a simple yet elegant navy dress. You look beautiful, dear, Martha placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. You look lovely too, Mom, Avery smiled. How's Dad doing? Wrestling with his tie, Martha laughed. This might be the first time Howard has dressed so formally since our wedding. They laughed together, but Martha's expression soon turned serious. Avery, do you truly love this man? Avery looked directly into her mother's eyes. Yes, I do. Nathan is truly a kind person. I'm glad to hear that answer, Martha smiled. Just, don't forget that the Coldwells, especially that Eleanor, are from a different world than ours. It's important that you don't lose yourself. I know, Mom, Avery held her mother's hand. But don't worry. I'm proud of who I am and where I come from. At that moment, the door opened again, and Avery's father Howard peeked in. He looked somewhat uncomfortable in his tuxedo, but his gentle smile remained unchanged. You both look beautiful, he said with a grin. Now, can someone teach this farm guy how to hold a fancy champagne glass? The three of them laughed as they headed to the ballroom. The venue was already filled with guests. Eleanor performed the role of perfect hostess, introducing her upper-class friends one after another to her son's fiancé. On the surface, she welcomed Avery and her parents politely, but her eyes held a calculated gleam. Ah, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, this is Nathan's fiancé, Avery. And these are the Grants. They run what do you call it, an organic farm. In Vermont. Avery maintained her smile and responded politely. Her parents also behaved graciously, showing no reaction to Eleanor's subtle sarcasm. Nathan proudly introduced the woman he loved and her family to his friends. Genuine affection shone in his eyes, and Avery felt certain of her love for him each time. However, as the night progressed, Eleanor's attitude began to change. She normally drank only 1 or 2 glasses, but tonight she had emptied numerous champagne glasses. Her words gradually became more venomous. Nathan grew up listening to classical music, Eleanor told a group of guests. I wonder what they listen to in Vermont. Tractor engine sounds. She laughed at her own joke, and some others laughed along. Nathan approached his mother, trying to calm her gently. Mother, perhaps you should rest a bit. I'm fine, Eleanor shook off her son's arm. I'm just celebrating your fiancé and her rustic family. Eleanor drained another glass of champagne and gradually raised her voice. Her sarcasm and insults were no longer disguised. When Howard was sharing stories about their idyllic farm, Eleanor interrupted, saying, what a primitive lifestyle. The rest of us live in civilization. As the atmosphere grew increasingly tense, Nathan went to Avery and took her hand. I'm so sorry. My mother isn't usually like this. Avery smiled gently at him. It's okay. What matters is our relationship, not what others think. Hearing this, Eleanor approached the couple, swaying slightly. Her eyes burned with anger. Others? Am I others? Her voice echoed throughout the room. The venue fell silent, and all eyes turned to them. Mother, stop, Nathan said in a low voice. But Eleanor wouldn't listen. She suddenly opened her designer wallet and pulled out several $100 bills. Hey, you, Eleanor addressed Avery. Her voice was cold, and her eyes filled with hatred. How much would it take for you to leave him? A woman who smells like a cow barn has no place in our family line. With that, Eleanor slapped the bills against Avery's chest. The bills fluttered to the floor, and the room froze in silence. Avery stood stunned, and Nathan was aghast. At that moment, quiet footsteps approached. Martha Grant slowly walked to her daughter's side and put an arm around her shoulders. There was dignity in her posture, and quiet anger in her eyes. Avery, Martha said to her daughter. We're leaving. Then she locked eyes with Eleanor. I hope you won't regret this. Those words carried more than a simple warning. Martha's eyes held the wisdom and strength of a woman who had lived a long life. Even Eleanor seemed to flinch for a moment. Howard came to Martha and Avery's side and took their arms. He looked at Nathan with a grave expression. I'm afraid we'll be taking our leave. The three Grants left the venue with their heads held high, maintaining their dignity. Avery wasn't crying. Her eyes held sadness along with a coldness she had never shown before. Avery. Nathan ran after them. Wait. What my mother said wasn't her true feelings. Avery turned around. Nathan, your mother has disliked me all along. Tonight she simply didn't hide it. Our relationship and my mother are separate, Nathan said desperately. I love you. But family is an important part of life, Avery said quietly. I love you, but I need some time right now. She left the hotel with her parents. Behind them, they could hear Nathan confronting his mother and the party falling into chaos. In front of the hotel, Martha embraced her daughter's shoulders. You're a strong girl, Avery. No matter what happens, we're on your side. Avery nodded silently. Her heart was in turmoil, but one thing was certain, she knew her own worth and had her family's unconditional love. By the time the morning sun began to illuminate the Vermont hills, Avery was already awake. She had barely slept all night and sat in the farm's old rocking chair watching the sunrise. Last night felt like a nightmare, but the pain in her chest was real. With a small sigh, Avery stood up and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. Her parents seemed to be still sleeping. They had returned from Boston to Burlington on an early morning flight yesterday and then driven back to the farm. They must have been exhausted. Looking out through the living room window, she could see the farm landscape stretching before her. Pastures in the morning mist and forests visible in the distance. This view had always brought her peace. But this morning, she couldn't fully appreciate its beauty. As she was brewing coffee in the kitchen, she heard the sound of a car engine outside. Avery frowned. Visitors this early in the morning were unusual. Looking out the window, she saw an unfamiliar luxury car coming up the farm's gravel road. When the car stopped, Nathan emerged from the driver's seat. And from the passenger seat appeared Eleanor Coldwell, the instigator of last night's incident. Avery's heart began to race. When she turned around, Martha was standing in the hallway. Her mother was already dressed, as if she had anticipated this visit. "Mom," Avery said in a confused voice. "Let's see." Martha placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "What will happen?" They moved toward the entrance. Opening the door, they found Nathan and Eleanor standing in the yard. Surprisingly, Eleanor's eyes were red and swollen, her perfect makeup smudged. She had clearly been crying. "Avery," Nathan stepped forward. "Would you hear us out?" Avery looked at Martha. Her mother nodded quietly. "We can talk on the porch," Avery said calmly. The four sat on the farm's old wooden porch. The morning air was cold and clear. "First, let me apologize for last night," Nathan began. "My mother." "I'll apologize myself," Eleanor interrupted. Her voice trembled, in stark contrast to her arrogance the night before. "Avery, my behavior was inexcusable. I'm truly sorry for hurting you." Avery silently stared at her, feeling confused by the sudden apology but intuiting that there was something deeper behind it. "But why?" Avery finally spoke. "Why did you hate me so much? From the moment we met, even though I hadn't done anything." Eleanor clasped her hands and took a deep breath. "It was, from my own fear and shame," she chose her words slowly. 20 years ago, the Coldwell family faced a major crisis. Joseph's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and we were about to lose everything. Avery was surprised. She had thought the Coldwell fortune was generations old. At that time, Eleanor continued, a farming family offered help. They loaned us funds without collateral. Thanks to that kindness, we were able to rebuild. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. "After you left last night, Nathan told me the truth. That farming family was the Grants," Martha quietly completed the sentence. Avery was speechless with surprise. She stared at her mother. "Mom? Is that true?" Martha nodded. 20 years ago, when you were still a teenager. That year, our maple syrup yield was exceptionally good, and we had surplus funds. Around that time, I heard from an old friend of your father's that his son's company was in trouble. That friend was my father," Eleanor said in a small voice. "I had no idea the Coldwells had any connection to you." "We didn't tell the children about financial matters," Martha explained. "But helping those in need was one of our values. We asked for neither collateral nor interest." Nathan leaned forward, looking into Avery's eyes. "This is where I should explain," he took a deep breath. "Actually, a few months ago, I was organizing my parents' old documents and found records of the loan from the Grant family." Avery's eyes widened. "So?" "Yes," Nathan nodded. "It wasn't coincidence when I first approached you at the farmer's market. I wanted to meet the Grant family. The family of benefactors who had saved my parents." The room fell silent. Avery felt confused and betrayed. "So meeting me, dating me, it was all to repay a debt." "At first, yes," Nathan answered honestly. "But Avery, as I talked to you and got to know you, I truly fell in love. Your strength, kindness, passion, they gave new meaning to my life." Avery stood up and leaned against the porch railing. Her mind was in confusion. The man she loved had lied to her from the beginning. Yet the motive behind the lie wasn't hatred but gratitude. Still, her heart was wounded. Avery, Eleanor stood up and came near her. There's no excuse for my behavior. At first, when I learned Nathan had approached you to repay our debt, I hoped it was merely out of obligation. But when I realized he truly loved you, I felt afraid. Afraid? Avery turned around. When we were weak, your family was strong, Eleanor said quietly. I couldn't accept that the daughter of a woman with the strength and pride like your mother would become my son's wife. It reminded me of my own weakness and shame. Martha slowly stood up and faced Eleanor. The two women were close in age but vastly different in lifestyle and values. There's nothing to be ashamed of, Eleanor, Martha said. Helping people in need is what we do for each other. What you should truly be ashamed of is your behavior last night. I understand, Eleanor bowed her head. I came here this morning not just to apologize. I want to return 10 times the amount your family loaned us. That's not necessary, Martha said firmly. We don't need the money. All we want is our daughter's happiness. For the first time, Eleanor looked at Martha with genuine respect. You truly are a strong woman. Martha smiled. So are you, Eleanor. You just have a different kind of strength. Avery was still confused, but something was changing in her heart. She looked at Nathan. You lied to me from the beginning. The reason for our first meeting was a lie, Nathan admitted. But my love for you is real. I want a chance to start over. Avery didn't answer. Tears welled in her eyes. Complex emotions swirled within her, the pain of betrayal, memories of love, and confusion about the new truth. I need time, she finally said. Time to think. Nathan couldn't hide his disappointment but nodded. I understand. No matter how long it takes, I'll wait. Eleanor approached Avery and started to take her hand but stopped midway. I won't ask for forgiveness. But if you would give me another chance, I would welcome you as Nathan's wife and, as a daughter. 6 months later, Maple Crest Farm was dressed in autumn colors. Trees turned red and gold surrounded the farm, and harvested fields lay quietly. Avery sat on a garden bench, having just finished reading the latest in a series of weekly letters. True to his promise, Nathan had been writing to her every week. He was never pushy, simply sharing his daily life and thoughts, always closing with, "Whenever you're ready." Another one from Nathan. Martha approached with 2 cups of coffee. Yes, Avery smiled. This week he wrote about a small farm support fund he's established. He really has changed, Martha sat beside her daughter. After that morning, Avery chose to spend time alone to think. Her parents simply watched over her, offering advice only when asked. Mom, why didn't you tell me about the loan to the Coldwells years ago? Avery asked one day. It was part of our values, Martha answered. To help those in need and ask nothing in return. Even talking about the deed seemed like asking for recognition. Avery pondered this. Nathan's reason for meeting me was a lie. But I don't think there are lies in the letters he keeps sending. Trusting someone and betraying yourself are different things, Martha said. If you're honest with your heart, you'll find your answer. Several weeks after that day, Avery sent Nathan a short letter. It contained only the words, I want to see you. When Nathan arrived at the farm, Avery led him to the fields. There she said, your lie hurt me. But over these past months, you've shown me your true self. I want to try again. They reconciled and built their relationship on mutual truth this time. And now, the old barn at Maple Crest Farm was being decorated for a small wedding. Ready? Howard Grant took his daughter's arm, standing at the barn entrance. Yes, Dad, Avery nodded. Inside, a small gathering of close friends and family lined up. In the back were Eleanor and Joseph. Eleanor wore a simple yet elegant dress, not as flashy as her usual attire. Her eyes met Avery's, and she offered a warm smile. Over these 6 months, Eleanor had changed significantly. She had become involved in the Grants Farm support projects, using her social connections to promote the value of small-scale farming. She was still a perfectionist, but her passion was now directed constructively. As Avery stood beside Nathan and they exchanged vows, both families couldn't hold back tears of emotion. Two people from different worlds create a new world, the minister said. That is the miracle of love. After the wedding, Avery approached Eleanor. Congratulations, daughter, Eleanor said gently. I am truly fortunate. We are all fortunate, Avery smiled. To have gained a new family. At dusk, the new family stood together on the hill at Maple Crest Farm. Before them stretched a future that transcended the wounds of the past.